with TT now. This is a power-packed edition of the India development debate. Two debates on the show this evening. First one on the Sterlite shutdown, and then of course at 9:30 we've got another debate on the Delhi government's crackdown on private hospitals. But first up, the first move that we're going to talk about is the move by the Tamil Nadu government. Call it political opportunism, policy flip-flop, or whatever you will. It's shutters down for Sterlite Copper plant in Tuticorin in a knee-jerk reaction to last week's violent protest that claimed the lives of at least 13 people. The Tamil Nadu government today ordered a permanent closure of the mega plant here. Strangely enough, the order comes at a time when this industrial city is limping back to normalcy. Remember, it is the same EPS government whose police fired at the locals who were protesting against the Vedanta group's expansion project here that has announced the plant closure now.
Now, we at NEETI now believe that the decision to shut down the plant is ill-conceived, unimaginative, and is only aimed at winning some political brownie points. The order against Sterlite is sure to dent the industry-friendly image of Tamil Nadu, even as it tarnishes India's reputation as an investment destination, not to talk about job losses and the loss of revenue to the state exchequer. Some big questions remain. Should industry be held hostage to political whims and fancies? Isn't it high time that the government unveiled clear and transparent norms on environment protection? The decision to shut down the Sterlite plant and its implications for industry at large is a big topic of discussion and debate right here on the India Development Debate tonight. And joining us this evening on the debate are R. Jagannathan, Editorial Director, Swarajya Magazine, Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, Senior Journalist and Political Commentator, and Sumant C. Raman, Environmental Activist, on the phone right here. Let's take this across to Sumant Raman then. And Sumant, thank you very much for being with us. In its order today, the Tamil Nadu government has directed the Pollution Control Board to seal and close the plant permanently. Why didn't they think of this before? Why have they come up with this now? Because the reality is that they could have saved 13 lives. This almost seems and sounds like a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, it is clearly a knee-jerk reaction, I think, and I don't think that it has been well thought through also. So I think that, the idea of closure permanently did not occur to the state government prior to the ghastly incident where 13 people were shot. And, the entire method by which the TNPCB, that is the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board, has approached this issue is absolutely shocking. And mind you, this is not only for Sterlite. There are many factories who operate without license. The license is then given, 1 year later or 6 months later, or sometimes even years together. Plants are operating without license on the basis of deemed to have been granted status. So I think that this is, and obviously, how valid this will be legally is also a big question mark. There are many people who feel that, this GO may not stand scrutiny in a court of law. It's also, they very curiously mentioned this, Water Act, under which they've closed it, which means that the water pollution charges must be proven for the validity of the GO to stand. And that itself is, we don't know whether that will happen. So I think this is just a complete knee-jerk. It's also basically just to cool the political heat that the government has been facing on this issue. So I don't really believe that this has been thought through. At every stage, the Tamil Nadu government has mishandled this issue completely. And this is yet another yet another step in that sorry saga.
Okay, you've raised a couple of important points. I want to debate that with Jaggi and Paranjoy on the show. But first to you, Jaggi, the government says it decided to shut the plant based on what it called the people's request. And it quotes Article 48A of the Constitution that says the state shall endeavour to protect and improve the environment. Why did the government suddenly wake up to Article 48A of the Constitution? I mean, this plant has been in operation for years now. How come the Tamil Nadu government suddenly wakes up to the article in the Constitution?
Well, it's a cow my political backside move. It's nothing more than that. I think in any case, just because a large number of people are protesting outside, it does not mean that the protesters are right. What you've got to see is not handle the situation badly, make sure that nobody is hurt, but after killing 13 people, now they have nothing to do but to cover their backsides and hope that the people will forgive them for the kind of incompetence with which they have handled it. The point is, you cannot shut down a plant, and it will we have probably not heard the last of it. it is completely silly to shutter a plant that's been working for so many years. If there is a pollution issue, the shutdown should say till these pollution issues are addressed, you can't reopen. That's a sensible thing to do. So you shut down for 3 months and fix the pollution issues and then come back on stream. But to say there is a permanent shutdown, I think it's nothing more than just a political move to say that look, we have taken the strictest possible action, and now we should be absolved from all the blame for not taking the people into consideration in the earlier part and for the firings which are handled badly. Those are the kind of things that they are trying to cover themselves from. But I think sooner or later, I think we have not heard the last of it. The courts will probably have the last say in this, and I think we should take up the Sterlite chairman's offer that look, have an independent group of experts decide what is the ideal and final level of protection for the environment you need, and then open the plant in stages. That's probably the most sensible way to go.
No, I agree with you. I don't think we've seen the end of this, and I completely agree with you on the other point that you alluded to, but did not really build upon, which is this is a sign of weak political leadership. I wonder if Jayalalitha would have done that had she been the chief minister. This is a sign of extremely weak leadership. But Paranjoy, let me ask you this question. This government order, which seems to be riled with populism, which seems to be riled with acting on perception, knee-jerk, will this hold in a court of law? I mean, shouldn't they have enacted this through legislative means, even if they had to go ahead with this? This can be challenged so easily. I mean, any court will be willing to hear this matter.
I cannot speak on behalf of what the judiciary may or may not rule. But let me just lay down certain facts before you. This copper smelting unit came up in 1996. Okay? In 2010, the Madras High Court ordered it shut. 3 years later, the Supreme Court set aside this ruling. It ordered the company to pay 100 crore rupees as a fine. In 2013, the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board ordered that it be shut down for some time. Okay, now wait, give me a few more minutes. We have here a chief minister, Mr. Palaniswamy, who first says that, these protesters were incited by anti-social elements. 100 days they were protesting. And then the way the police fire, they're not firing at their feet. There are videos which show how the cops took positions on top of a bus. Okay? And there are videos which show at least one policeman saying that at least one protester must die. 13 people die. Okay? After that, there's a terrible hue and cry, not only across Tamil Nadu, across India, across the world. And then suddenly, the same Mr. Palaniswamy, Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, suddenly wants to respect public sentiments. Well, nobody's really fooled. But give me 1 more minute, and I'll tell you that the Vedanta Sterlite group, headed by Mr. Anil Agarwal, has a particularly pathetic track record as far as environmental or following the laws of the land pertaining to the environment. Whether it be in Lanjigar, in Orissa, in Goa, in Maharashtra, there have been one after the other, a series of episodes, incidents, where it seems this company doesn't really care very much about what local people, where they're conducting their operations, think.
Okay, Paranjoy, I take that point. Paranjoy, I take that point, and in this very program, I take that point, Paranjoy. In this very program last week, we were very critical. I don't think anyone is going to absolve the Vedanta group of their responsibility and the manner in which they've taken environmental clearances for a ride. We debated this with activists as well. What we're debating tonight is whether a shutdown is a solution or not. But Sumant, if I could come to you, how permanent is permanent when it comes to Sterlite in Tamil Nadu? Paranjoy there pointed out the history of this entire case, and this issue has been simmering for 20 years now. There have been multiple court verdicts, multiple observations by green tribunals in the past that went against Vedanta, which they subsequently won on appeal. It's a massive conglomerate that sort of gets its way through. So are we going to see more of the same here as well, where things get back to business as usual?
No, I think I agree with Paranjoy in terms of the history that Sterlite has as far as Tuticorin is concerned. I mean, there have been so many violations that have been pointed out by the, in fact, the Honorable Supreme Court fined them laid down 100 crore fine and said that they were operating without a license for several years and for possible environmental damages that may have been caused. Now, this was in 2013. Now, the issue is consistently there have been violations. But having said that, the issue should be decided purely on the merits of the case. Now, is there environmental pollution going on? Are the rules being violated? And unfortunately, in all that's happened over the last, 2 to 3 months, and particularly over the last 1 week, I think that Sterlite also handled it extremely badly. So I think that, there would be zero public sympathy for the way Sterlite handled this. They should have come out with the data, voluntarily put out the data in the public domain, tried to talk to the people, the protesters, and tried to explain to them their side of the story. Instead, the whole approach was, somehow we can wangle our way out of this, using our clout with the government and so on. I think that was a completely disastrous decision on the part of Sterlite, and I think it's backfired big time on them. And quite honestly, I mean, whoever devised the strategy of how Sterlite should handle this, I think that they are, to a large extent, to blame. Very little was done to reach out to these protesters to try to put out their side of the story. Hardly 3 weeks back or so, they came out with a offer inviting people to come inside and see the plant. Why couldn't that have been done 4 or 5 months ago when this protest started? So I think it's been extremely badly handled by them also. It's been badly handled by the government. And at the end of the day, eventually it is going to be the courts that will decide whether the plant reopens or not. Most importantly, we've really not had either the Tamil Nadu government through the Pollution Control Board or the Sterlite themselves put out facts in the public domain except, very, very brief pieces of data. It's the protesters who've been putting out a lot of data, and much of that data pertains to the pre-2013 era, for which is all covered by the Supreme Court judgment. So post-2013, there is hardly any data which has been put out, neither by Sterlite nor by the Tamil Nadu government. And that is where we have a huge lacuna to sort of, for the public to even assess, look, is this environmental damage as great as the protesters are claiming, or as low as Sterlite says? Nobody actually knows the answer to that now.
Fair point. Suman, just hold your thoughts there, because I want to draw in Paranjoy also back into this debate. And Paranjoy, while a lot of blame does lie on Sterlite and also on the government, do you believe permanent closure is a drastic move? Because when you look at this through the lens of investment and employment, it tells you the other side of the story. Vedanta claims this is its biggest copper smelter unit globally, and an employment number, I mean, direct, indirect, all included, between 30 to 35,000. This will have implications.
Now, 1 minute. The number of people who were permanently employed was a fraction of the number of people who are on contract work, and even a smaller, a much higher proportion get indirect employment. Contrast that with the fact that in that surrounding region, every other household has a cancer patient, that there have been respiratory ailments which have been completely rampant. There is adequate evidence to show how the air of that area and the water of the area has been polluted. Secondly, you are here wanting to expand that unit. It is the copper smelting plant, you want to double the capacity. Now wait, I don't think it's as simple as that. I think the problem is that the person who heads Vedanta, Mr. Anil Agarwal, he believes that he can get away so long as he's able to cozy up to the politicians and the political people in power. And as I mentioned before, 100 days of protest, police firing, 13 people killed. Give me 2 more minutes and I'll tell you what I mean. In March 2014, the High Court of Delhi ruled that a trust that had been set up by the Vedanta group and which had given donations to the Bharatiya Janata Party and the Indian National Congress was illegal. It should not have received donations because this was a foreign controlled entity. Now, what happened? Finance Minister Mr. Arun Jaitley who doesn't like retrospective amendments to the law when it comes to Vodafone, retrospectively amends the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act and to give a clean chit, virtually overruling the Delhi High Court judgment.
Okay.
A few other points. When the Prime Minister visited London in April and earlier in 2015, it was Vedanta who took out full-page ads, who sponsored all his events. In June 2004, Mr. Agarwal said the entire world is looking towards Mr. Modi and Mr. Modi's government. The point I'm trying to make is there is a nexus between business and politics.
Okay.
And that's why they thought they could get away with it. Somewhere along the line, they've gone too far.
Okay, okay, Jaggi, comment on that. Paranjo is saying that there is a nexus, an ugly nexus between business and politics, and Vedanta thought they could get away with it, and they've gone too far. And and Supriya raised this issue. We lost the link there. We've got Jaggi back now. Raised the issue of the impact on employment, impact on livelihood. But given Vedanta's terrible track record when it comes to environmental norms, was this the most practical outcome? I mean, the company, for instance, allegedly obtained an environment clearance without conducting a public hearing as prescribed by the environmental impact assessment notification. So, there have been serious violations. Jaggi?
Yes, absolutely. I think we cannot have any company anywhere. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, go ahead.
Yeah. We cannot have a situation where any company can flout the law based on its political or whatever connection. So, I am not on that. The point is that we cannot also have arbitrary shutdowns like this, where large investments and all are completely ruined and people lose their jobs because you've got, what I think you must have a time-bound plan to rectify things rather than think. And I don't believe that the NGOs are entirely blameless in the matter. Though obviously I think that the government and the company handle it badly. If there is no point of contact and no point of compromise between people and activists who believe that the plant should be shut down and the plant managers who believe that there should be a via media, then there is a problem. If NGOs could not care less whether a company functions or not, I mean their sites are somewhere else in some high morality which makes no sense in business relationship. I think the NGOs also cannot have an all or nothing approach. If they want all or nothing, they'll get nothing, and I think it is damaging everybody. This thing. The problem with many of these plants, whether it is Kudamkulam or Sterlite, is that when these plants were set up, there were no great population clusters around them. But over a period of time, people come around them and suddenly the people find that there is pollution or there is something. So obviously, this is the issue that needs to be handled. So either a plant should be, even if it is set up in a place where there are very few people around, by the time the plant comes into being and it starts producing fully, you find there are clusters of people all around you. This is what happened in Kudamkulam, and this could happen in Tirunelveli, or it's happened in Bombay where you have the RCF factory and all, and there are huge residential colonies coming up. So I think what I'm trying to say is that these issues need to be solved through a compromise and a steady improvement in pollution control. You can't have drastic solutions like this, just shut it down. Fine, shut it down. Where do you want to put it? Will you send it to Andamans and produce copper from there?
Yeah, that's a valid point, and I think you're bringing another leg of this discussion on the table. But Suman, just to carry Jaggi's point forward, that the solution is not in just completely shutting it down. Paranja, I'll just come to you in a bit. But Suman, couldn't there have been a middle path here, a transparent, full-scale audit and a strict rider that Vedanta would have had to comply with to resume operations instead of just a blanket shutdown? This is like throwing the baby with the bath water, quite literally.
Look, of course there is a middle ground, and it's a $1 million question as to why, Sterlite never even attempted to go down that middle ground path in terms of being transparent with whatever data they had. Look, this issue of cancer, which Paranjoy just brought up. Now, I did the inquiry with the Tamil Nadu Cancer Registry, which is run by a cancer institute, which is a very reputed organization. It is not a government organization. Now, Tuticorin ranks 14th among 32 districts for males and 25th among 32 districts for females. Now, that's the incidence. The incidence has not shown any spurt in the last few years. It's remained fairly steady. Now, if we are going to say that there is a lot of cancer, that has to be documented with evidence. So this whole problem is, now neither did, I mean, apart from one very, very sort of wishy-washy kind of a note which Sterlite issued, they never even went to town saying that, look, the incidence of cancer is not higher. And all we got on television and regional media was day after day, patients saying that, my relative developed cancer, was living few kilometers away and so on. The other very important thing in terms of air pollution, sulfur dioxide was supposed to be the most key contaminant. Now, there are 5 thermal plants in Tuticorin which are putting out, which Sterlite itself says are putting out nearly 2.5 lakh kilograms of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, whereas Sterlite treating the sulfur dioxide, converting it into sulfuric acid, and they are putting out hardly 3,000 to 4,000 kilograms a day. Now, this is a point which one logically would have thought they would have gone to town with to say that, look, there are thermal plants which are putting out 10 times, 20 times more sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, and it's not us if there is pollution, air pollution in Tuticorin. And even that they didn't do. So, I mean, I'm extremely curious as to what the strategy was, whether they felt so emboldened that at the end of the day they could just take care of some government officials and sort this whole thing out, the environment be damned. I don't know what the approach was. It made zero sense to any of us who observed this issue over the last, few months at least. It makes no sense as to how and why Sterlite handled the issue the way it did. If they had merely been more transparent, if they had reached out to the people in the protesters, if they had made a public campaign, invited people to see their plant, put out the data in the public domain, they could have found a middle ground. Unfortunately,
I take that point. I take that point.
Yeah.
So, today in an interview to the Economic Times, Anil Agarwal said he did invite people to visit the plant and offer suggestions. But I take the point of the fact that the locals were not taken on board.
3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, that offer came. Not 3 months ago when it should have come.
Okay, fair. I take that point. But Poranja, because you understand the business impact as well, and I want you to respond to the point made there by Jaggi eloquently that these things hurt the investment climate. I mean, there have been references to this being Tamil Nadu's Nandigram moment. In the aftermath of Nandigram, investments did take a big hit in West Bengal. Tamil Nadu has traditionally been one of the biggest states to attract FDI, seen as an investment-friendly destination. Don't you believe that moves like this, which are seen as knee-jerk, that are seen as reactionary, will impact future investments in the state as a whole?
Mr. Gurumurthy, in all humility, let me suggest that the police firing on 13 people, killing 13 people, is doing more harm to the business environment and the environment and the investment environment in this country than anything else. I want to emphasize 2 or 3 points. You talk about compromise. You're talking about throwing the baby out with the bath water. What were you doing for 100 days when tens of thousands of people were peacefully agitating? You can blame the NGOs and the troublemakers, but what were you, Sterlite management, doing? What were you, Tamil Nadu government, doing? And yes, what was the central government doing? What was the media doing? Did you have to wait till a situation arises when people are shot down by the police, and then only you start waking up to the problem? And then after all this has happened, when an inefficient, incompetent state government wants to cover up for all the mistakes it's made, it said, these are being incited, these agitators are being incited by troublemakers, anti-social elements. Today you are now saying I'm respecting public sentiments and therefore you're shutting it down. Why did you have to reach that situation? That compromise could have been arrived at some months ago if you had been sensitive. You thought you could get away with it. That's the problem. Sandeep, in all humility, I say, you allowed a situation to escalate. And this, in my opinion, is doing more harm to the investment climate and the business environment in this country than anything else. The fact that you have incompetent governments, which allow negligent managements to get away with absolutely blue murder. And then you should not complain that after being in this situation, you're complaining that you're throwing the baby out with the bath water. Yeah.
Bath water. No, I think, Paranjo, you make an important point there that, you know, this perhaps is a collective miss of not just the incompetent state government, but the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board, Sterlite, the central government, both UPA and NDA, for not having clear norms as far as environment is concerned. But Jaggi, let me take this forward. What is the way out? What is the way forward to ensure we create an ecosystem that is conducive to sustainable development, where we balance ecological and health goals with development and investment goals? How do we, is that too utopian and which is why elusive, or can we actually get around to doing it? Jaggi.
See, in the case of natural resources, especially petroleum, refinery, and say copper smelting, those kind of areas, they tend to be high polluting industries. What you need to have is a very strong norm which is implemented throughout the country, and where people make the necessary investments to minimize the ecological and public safety norms. Damage is really limited, and then after that you got to probably have compulsory public hearings where people are heard out, and the companies have to explain what they are doing, and they have to be satisfied. So in a democracy you need to do both, but you cannot have also mobs coming and stopping some work. You cannot have state governments that are so incompetent that they will not bring the two parties together and try and solve the problem. Everybody is turning their faces away till actually something terrible happens and 13 people die for no reason at all. I mean, that's the problem. I think you don't have governments that are proactive. You don't have laws that make sense, that will ultimately cannot be got around with by bribing a few officials here. You must have public confidence. All these three things have to be done together, and that's the only way forward. It's not about just law alone. It's not about NGOs alone. It's not about the company alone. We are failing on all the fronts.
Couldn't have summed it up more aptly there, Jaggi. Timed out on this edition of the India Development Debate. Paranjoy, Jaggi, Sumant, thank you for joining us. I think big business cannot get away by flouting environmental norms. I think the tolerance to that has to not be there, and that's an important learning from this entire episode. But equally, governments, both at the centre and the state, need to be more transparent. Need to show the rule book to corporate India to ensure that environmental norms are unflouted. Need to be predictable. Need to be transparent to ensure that industry can grow, keeping in mind the sensitivity of the local community and the environment at large. So, yeah.
Indeed, thanks very much for being with us on this edition of the India Development Debate. We take a quick breather and we are back with yet another set of large corporates being put on the mat. And yes, we are talking about the private hospital chains. It's an emotive issue, but there are stories to be told on both sides of that spectrum. The hospitals have a story to tell, and so do the patients, who are often at the receiving end. We come back in a moment to discuss the ARP government's move to cap the profitability and prices of drugs being sold at these private hospitals. Coming up in a bit, right here on the India Development Debate.